I, Francis Asenso-Boakye,
swear by the Almighty God
swear by the Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give before this committee
that the evidence I shall give before this committee
touching the matter in issue shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me.
So help me God.
Francis Asenso-Boakye. On behalf of the committee, I congratulate you on your nomination as the Minister for Works and Housing. In the last 4 years, you were Deputy Chief of Staff, but now you are elected Member of Parliament, this House, representing Bantama constituency. Now, if there's anything more necessary for us to know, tell us. We don't want myself, just any important thing we must know. Kindly tell us.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I'm the Member of Parliament for Bantama, and I had my O-level education at Citi Secondary School, and had my O-level, A-level.
I said we are not interested in the myself part. You can tell us your last highest qualification if is necessary. And then,
I hold a master's degree from Michigan State University, and also a bachelor's degree from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
yeah.
Yes, Francis Asenso-Boakye, I join Chairman in congratulating you. Go to the second page of your CV. Were you providing oversight over various ministries, departments, and agencies as Deputy Chief of Staff?
I'm sorry, the question again.
Chairman, I'm reading from his CV. Assisted the Chief of Staff at the Presidency in providing oversight of the various ministries, departments, and agencies. Was that your role? Are you talking of supervision or oversight?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I believe it's just a matter of semantics. Oversight, my understanding here is supervision of the various ministries and agencies.
Nama, he knows that we'll jealously safeguard that as one of our onerous responsibility as an organ of government, oversight. We are very jealous about it. I should understand that you meant supervision. Is that the case, Honorable Nominee?
Yes, Honorable Chairman.
You will be Minister for Works and Housing, and it's capital intensive. Everything you want to do, you want to end flooding, you want to improve social housing, you want to improve infrastructure. It's about funding. Where will you get the money to do your work well as Minister?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, in terms of the protection of coastal communities from erosion, the funding has mainly been from Government of Ghana sources, GOG sources. And in fact, the last 4 years, government has spent over 1.1 billion from GOG sources protecting our coastal territories. So even though it's capital intensive, government still sees the need to provide the funds. In the case of drains and drainage system, government has spent over 400 million the last 4 years, the provision of drainage facilities as part of the National Flood Control Program. So the inaction of these activities have dire consequences for the country. So government strive to raise the resources for these projects. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Yes, Honorable Samchahi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we've been talking about housing deficit for a while. Now, it is estimated that there are about 2 million housing deficits in the country. What do you propose that as a country we do to ensure that we reduce the housing deficits on our hand as a country?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the experience we have over the years shows that we have been producing about 40,000 houses a year, and our housing deficit currently stands at 2 million housing units, which means that if we want to close the gap in 10 years, we have to produce 200 houses a year. And this is a very huge gap, and I think it requires different strategies that we have been using over the years. It requires government active intervention. And my answer is not far from what is stated in the NDC MPP manifesto and the National Housing Policy. For some time now, National Housing Policy. For some time now, we haven't had a clear institutional framework that will guide the implementation of housing policies in our country. So there's the need to establish a national housing authority for the planning and management of the housing delivery. That is one. And this national housing authority will create land banks and provide infrastructure, on-site infrastructure for the land bank. This is what we call site and service schemes. The idea is that if government is able to absorb the cost of land and cost of infrastructure, meaning roads and utilities, we will have contributed to absorbing 50% of cost of construction of house. And that would mean that the house per unit, cost per unit, would have been reduced by 50%. So if on the average, a house is costing 300,000, and government absorbing these facilities, land and utilities and roads, the price per unit will be 150,000, and it will be affordable. With a very credible mortgage scheme to support it, this will be very affordable to many Ghanaians. And that is the strategy I'm proposing for the reduction of the huge housing deficit.
Lomini, 150,000 Ghana cedis will be affordable to many Ghanaians, but it will also be outside the reach of many Ghanaians. Do you have any plans to invest in rental units, particularly for young upstarts, young people who have started work, young people who have just gotten employment, transferred out of home for the first time, required to pay 2 years, 3 years in advance? Do you have any plans to construct rental units which such young people can take advantage of?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, you are right.
we try to answer it together with the first question that I asked. What I want to find out is the cost of building materials. Cost of building materials. In December, if you take iron rods, for instance, 16 millimeters cost 3,800. At the moment, it is 5,200 Ghana cedis. 12 mm, also 5,200. If you take cement, in December, it was 40 Ghana cedis. Today, it's around 45, 46 Ghana cedis. What do you think we should do as a country to reduce the cost of building materials?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the recent hike in the cost of building material has been attributed to huge international shipment costs in recent times. This was attributed to the COVID pandemic. But when it comes to building material, what we have to do as a country is to go into the production of local building material. For me, that is the long-term agenda of the ministry when I get the nod. Because the local building materials, if you're able to produce in large quantities, will be much cheaper. But the real challenge is how our local folks will accept our local building materials, like bent-based and all that. So it is important that we work with stakeholder institutions, for example, BARI, that has done a lot of research into local building materials, and Department of Rural Housing, that has the mandate to build capacity of people to use local material for local housing. So that's it's highly on my agenda, and I will work hard to promote that.
Mr. Chairman, perennial flooding in Accra and Tema in some parts of the country. I see this as a lack of political will on the part of the successive governments. Your predecessor, Honorable Atachia, when he assumed office, he stated that to address the perennial flooding problem in Accra and Tema will require about $700 million to be able to holistically address the flooding problem in Accra and Tema. So now we are in January, February. Everybody has gone to sleep. March, April, May, when the rain sets in, all of us will be struggling with the flood in Accra and Tema. What are you going to do to ensure that government raise the necessary funding to tackle this problem in Accra and some part of the country?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, what my predecessor said about the need for adequate funding is right, in the sense that our drainage system, as we have now, were built many years ago, and most of them have outlived its usefulness because of population increase, urbanization, and what have you. But channels that lead to Odo and Kole Lagoon and those places that are the flood-prone areas. In June 2015, for instance, Ashaiman District Assembly had taken it upon themselves to do dredging ahead of the rains. So when we were hit by the rains on June 10th, Ashaiman didn't experience flooding. This tells you the importance of the dredging exercise that we do every year. So we have to continue, and it has to be timeless. It has to start before the rain begins. And when I get a nod, I'm going to make sure that we start the early dredging. Secondly, we have to ensure stringent implementation of our waste collection system. I will collaborate with the Ministry of Water and Sanitation to ensure that, because that is one of the primary reasons that causes flooding in Accra. People indiscriminately throw solid waste into drainage channels that prevent free flow of water. These two immediate measures are very important to prevent flooding here in Accra. And as part of the National Control Program, in the last 4 years, a lot has been done in terms of desilting, concrete lining, and excavation works. In fact, in 2018, 205 million Ghana cedis was spent on the National Control Program. And in 2020, 250 million Ghana cedis has also been spent, and contracts have been awarded for people to start work. So all these measures all go into the prevention of flood, and that is why in the last 4 years, we haven't seen major flooding here in Accra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the previous NDC government started a housing project at Sagremi. The first phase of the project, 2005, started and got to a point when he left office. At some point, the project came to a halt, and just want to find out from you what you will do to resuscitate the project, to complete it, so that Ghanaians can benefit from that project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Saglimi project is a very important project. It was meant to decongest the city of Accra. And I want to take this opportunity to commend the initiator. It was a very good project. I've received a briefing, full briefing of the matter, and my major preoccupation is simple, is to see to the early completion of the project. We cannot allow the taxpayers' money to go to waste. And that is my major preoccupation. When I get the nod, I'll put a team together to advise me on the various financing options that will be needed to get the project going. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, my last question. Mr. Chairman. As a result of erosion, we are losing a lot of communities along the coastal lines. What will you do to ensure that those communities that we have lost, will reclaim them, and lands that have been lost as a result of erosion by the sea, we can also reclaim them? What specifically will you do? As leader said, it's very, very capital intensive. What effort will you put in to ensure that communities that are being lost as a result of tidal waves are put to a stop?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I've already indicated that even though it's capital intensive, the President, Nana Akufo-Addo's administration, has made it possible that resources are available for this project. And for the last 4 years, over 1.1 billion cedis have been invested in the provision of sea defense for the protection of our coastal enclave. As Minister, God willing, when I get the Lord, I will continue the program and make sure that we protect our coastal communities. The coastal stretch is 550 kilometers. And out of that, the experts say that 2/3 of them need some sort of protection. And if you do not do anything about it, it has dire consequences for our country. So we have to find the money and continue with what we have been doing.
Thank you, Honorable Ahi. Yes, we also haven't asked the question today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Francis Asenso-Boakye, congratulations. I make reference to page 87 of the NPP manifesto for the 2020 elections. And says that one of the promises that was made in 2016 was to facilitate the construction of low and mid-income housing over the short, medium, and long term. Now, following that, over 5,770 acres was acquired as at 2018 at Sege and Ojubi. Additional 1,313 acres acquired around Yankonya and Kwema. Now, the best part of this one for me is the fact that government had established a national housing and mortgage finance scheme to address both the housing supply and demand side financing challenges, and Mr. Chairman made allusion to that. Now, I believe that a very solid foundation has been laid for a smooth takeoff. Now, can you guarantee to this committee that within the next 4 years, if you happen to be the minister during that period, you'll be able to accomplish this housing scheme? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the Honorable MP is right. The acquisition of these land banks is to serve as the basis to roll out these affordable programs. And the plan is to service these service these land banks, provide on-site infrastructure, including roads and utilities, so that we can work with public developers like State Housing and private developers like Grader to provide these affordable housing homes for our people. So you are right. That's exactly what we are going to do, Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Zvera, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Honorable Nominee. Honorable Nominee, I want to find out from you, does your government have any intention of leveraging the pension fund for housing development? And if so, why?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, it is a manifesto pledge of the MPP that you are going to leverage the housing fund for housing development. As we speak, the pension fund law allows just 5% of the pension fund portfolio to be able to spend on housing development. It's also a manifesto pledge that we want to increase that 5% so that we can have more space to leverage for housing development. There's a very good reason why you want to leverage the pension fund, because it is a long-term investment, and you need long-term investment for construction finance and a credible mortgage regime. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. My next question is on Public Works Department, commonly called PWD. There's this general perception out there that it's being underutilized. Others think it's outlived its usefulness and it's overstaffed, and government is spending money on an entity that is viewed as not contributing anything to the economy. What will be your approach to dealing with the issue of PWD to make it more friendly and more effective in the eyes of Ghanaians as we used to know them to be when we were growing up? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the Public Works Department is a very old institution. In fact, it was established in 1850. And their mandate is to supervise the construction and maintenance of government bungalows and offices. Over the years, their scope of work has reduced considerably, and they still depend on government subventions. So the staff have relaxed a little bit, even though they have very qualified engineers and surveyors and architects. What I think it should be done is for Public Works Department to be run like a business, so that they can leverage on their expertise and seek private sector work as well. I think they have to adopt private sector management techniques so that they can be competitive. So when, God willing, I get a nod, I will encourage them to adopt good marketing strategies. They have to have a business unit where they can seek jobs. They have to have a marketing department where they can market their product. All these have to be done to make them vibrant in the new world. And as minister, I'm going to champion that. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My last question has to do with affordable housing. And as you would, I think everybody here will agree that it's been the most topical part of your vetting this evening. But there's been a phenomenon that governments come in, start affordable housing projects, and then if elections don't go well, and those governments exit, the incoming government abandons the projects. Why does that happen? What can we do? What will you do if it's to continue projects that especially come directly to the so-called vulnerable? So if we are doing affordable housing projects, and because a government exited, another government comes and then abandons the project and goes to start a new one. And if that government is not lucky and in 4 years they are out, the next coming government abandons it, and then we have all these projects scattered around the country, and people don't have housing. Will you be able and willing to move or support legislation to compel incoming governments to complete these projects? Otherwise, they will be charged for causing financial loss to the state, because the monies involved is the taxes of the people. What are your thoughts about this phenomenon? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the Honorable Member is right, and I believe that she's hit the nail right on the head. The problem is that over the years, we don't have a well-defined institutional framework to guide our housing development, and affordable housing is one of them. And that is why earlier on, I proposed the establishment of a national housing authority, whose duty will be to plan and manage all housing development, including affordable housing. So all these affordable housing programs will be managed by the housing authority, and it will not be like a project is a political project. It will be part of an institution, so that whichever government is in place, the National Housing Authority will take charge of the project and implement it to the letter. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Honorable nominee, are you aware of Article 35(7) of the Constitution? Let me read it to strengthen your argument. As far as practicable, a government shall continue and execute projects and programs commenced by the previous governments. So it's actually a constitutional mandate. It's in the law already, but we should ensure that they are enforced. So take note. If you don't continue any projects, we'll bring you here to come and answer questions on that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Yes, Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable nominee, quite an impressive CV from humble beginnings in North Central to Michigan State University. Quite an achievement. But going through your CV, I realized you spent close to about 12 years with the current president, and as a personal assistant, and then a political assistant to a chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, and political assistant to the president. You've been quite close to the president for 12 years. For those of us who've not had that benefit, what is in that mind? And what are the takeaways as you leave the Flagstaff House to the ministry?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the Honorable Member for Abetifi is right. I've had opportunity to work with the President for a very long time, especially his days as the opposition leader of Ghana. And I think there are 2 or 3 things that I believe I can say about him that I pray to God that I'll be able to do same in my public office. First of all, the president is a very honest man. Whatever he tells you is exactly what he does. Honesty is his best policy. Secondly, the president is a fair person. He doesn't discriminate. He treats people equally, regardless of your gender, your ethnic background, or religious affiliation. And thirdly, anybody who has come close to the president will agree with me that he's a man of compassion. He's a very compassionate man, to the extent that if even, like we say in our local parlance, that that's the kind of person he is.
So wait.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
We want the English translation of what you said in Chi. Well, let me help you.
If he's eating and he sees another person hungry, he will take out his food and give it to the person. That's the literal translation of the.
Mr. Nominee, clearly we may not be able to establish any negative causality against you. And I just, working with you in the last 10 years from the party office, I know that you will deliver if given the nod as a minister. I pray for you. Good luck.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think the words from the Honorable Member for Abetifi are very kind words, and I want to express my appreciation for that. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Yes, Honorable Ajay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Honorable Nominee, as a former Minister for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts, I know what countries are doing with planning, and I have Marrakesh, Morocco in mind. The city is well planned, and it serves as a tourist attraction. What policy measures do you have to stop this haphazard development that we have in Ghana? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I'm a trained development planner, and I have a fair appreciation of what a controlled development can do for the country. Unfortunately, the duty of making sure that our city is well planned is in the hands of the district assemblies. And we need effective collaboration with the district assemblies to ensure that permits are issued to places where it will not create problem. The proposal I made earlier that the National Housing Authority will provide land banks and service the land banks. When I say service, I mean providing infrastructure to the land banks and giving these service plots to developers to build is one surest way of ensuring controlled development. And I can assure you that if you come to this house and we pass this law for the establishment of the Ghana Housing Authority, it will go a long way in avoiding situations of haphazard development. Thank you.
Very well. Yes, Giselle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, would you support, you're advocating for the National Housing Authority. You're advocating for the National Housing Authority, but would you support a paradigm shift whereby if about 90% of the housing stock is being developed by private individuals, some assistance will be given to these private individuals instead of public housing, stocks of public housing in that manner? Would you consider such a combination under the National Housing Authority that you are proposing?
I'm sorry, can you clarify what do you mean by support to private individuals? What kind of support? If you can clarify so that I can proceed.
Financial support for people to put up their houses. If you look in, you said you're a development planner. Say you are entering into Kumasi from the air. As you are descending, you see a lot of buildings uncompleted with no roofs. Somebody started it and got stuck at a point. Would you consider a system under the National Housing Authority that you are proposing, such that there will be either some facilities to help them to complete, or other than just mainstream public housing with land banks and so on and so forth? Will you consider a combination of that?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Member, I find your question interesting, and God willing, when I get the nod, I will take a closer look at it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. My second question. My second question. The Ministry of Works and Housing undertakes the classification of contractors, am I right? And issues them with certificates.
Yes, you are right.
All right. You also appreciate that construction is on every institution's budget, even a household. The construction or the house is the biggest capex item. Would you advocate for regulation of the construction industry in any way, such that, for example, there are different tiers of contractors, not just on paper only, but actually in practice? Because people have these as their businesses, they invest into equipment, and surely they would want to see some sustainability along the way. Would you consider regulating the construction industry? And how would you go about it?
Thank you very much. I will support such a move, and I'm aware that there are plans for major players in the construction industry to set up construction development bill. I can't recall the exact name of it, but there are attempts at regulating the whole construction industry, of which housing is part. And I want to assure you that I will support such a move, because it's very much needed in the sector.
Thank you. And then my last question has to do with rent. The rental market is huge. Lots of migration, people just looking for a place to perch or just to stay to make ends meet. What active policies are you going to put in place? Are you going to support the adjustments to the Rent Control Act or upgrading the Rent Control Act? Or what do you think you could do to help the people who make use of the rental market?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the Rent Act was passed so many years ago, at a time that the population in the urban centers was not as huge as now. Today, Ghana's urban population is 58%, almost 68%, and the urban growth rate is 33%. The current act cannot support such a situation, and implementation of the current act will make the landlords engage in opportunistic tendencies, in the sense that if you strictly implement the 6 months advance, the landlord will pull back their services. So there has been extensive consultation, extensive stakeholder engagement, and there is a widespread view that we should extend the 6 months advance to 1 year. In that case, the landlords will benefit and the tenants will benefit. And it's part of the new rent bill that has been drafted, and very soon it will go to Cabinet and subsequently to Parliament for passage. And I want to believe that when it comes, you will support it. Thank you very much, Honorable.
Honorable Member, the current Rent Act says that for residential premises, you can take no more than 3 months. For commercial premises, you can take no more than 6 months in advance. We have not been able to enforce that, such that everybody names the advance he wants. What makes you think that we'll be able to enforce it if we take it to 1 year in either circumstance?
The 1 year rent advance was reached out after extensive stakeholder engagement. So my understanding is that when that one is faced, everybody will accept it because they took part of it. And in that case, we will be in the position to enforce it. And before enforcement, we will make sure that we do extensive stakeholder sensitization for everybody to know its rights in the new Rent Act when passed.
I hope so. Yes, they are well.
Chairman, thank you. I have one question for the nominee. All of us do travel to our villages. I've seen Atimatim, Marseille, and I know the Department of Rural Housing is under your ministry, God willing, if you are, will be under your ministry, God willing, if you are confirmed. What will be your strategy for rural housing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rural housing is a very important part of the entire national housing strategy. And the Department of Rural Housing under the ministry has the responsibility of building the capacities of individuals and institutions to use local building materials for housing. And in the past, the Department of Rural Housing has collaborated with, say, Cocoa Board to build houses for farmers. They've also collaborated with Ghana Water and Ghana Water Company to build houses for their staff in the rural areas. But as we speak, they are faced with logistical issues. And I believe that when they are properly resourced, they can do more and more. So, God willing, when I'm giving the nod, I will work with my ministry officials in making sure that they are very properly resourced so that they can implement their mandate and ensure that we provide rural housing for our rural folks. Thank you very much.
Very well. Honorable Nilante.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Slum upgrading was a project, a collaboration between the Ministry of Works and Housing and local government and rural development. over the period, it has virtually become like dead, a dead policy. What assurances are you giving me, sitting here, that you reactivate the slum upgrading project so that my people in Old Fadama will have some respite? And then secondly, the Lagoon Ecological Restoration Program, which also forms part of the slum upgrading program because it links into it. Since 1996, almost every government, Rawlings, Kufuor, Mills, Mahama, and this government, it's like everybody does touch and go on the project. But the real Lagoon Ecological Restoration Program is there. What assurances will we get that in your time as a Minister for Works and Housing, the Lagoon Ecological Restoration Program will become a reality?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Slum upgrading is very important, especially in a city like Accra. And I've had opportunity to have an area view of Old Fadama. And it's something that you have to take a serious look at. When given the nod, I can't promise, but I will take a very close look at it because I can assure you that it's very dear to my heart.
Will you take a look at it or you endeavor to execute it and get it completed to improve livelihoods in that area? What is look at it?
When I say I take a serious look at it, it means that I want to do something about it.
Okay.
Yes. Thank
you. That's the meaning of you taking a look at it.
Serious look at it.
Okay.
Thank you. Regarding the Lagoon Ecological Project, I agree with you. It was a very well thought out program. Some aspects were done. For instance, the serious dredging activities were done. The construction of the interceptor weir was faced, and the squatters were supposed to move to Ajin Kotoku. That wasn't done. For me, that was one of the key lapses in that project. And the actual remediation and the restoration didn't happen. When I get to the ministry, I will engage with the various officials in charge and see how we can raise funds to continue with that project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Nominee, you've spoken about plans to add to the housing stock. But that's long term. And if you take the history of public housing development, on the average, it takes about 10 years to finish public housing projects across regimes in this country. So that's long term. Immediately, young people have a difficulty with paying 2 years rent advance, 3 years rent advance. They live in a country that has laws, and the laws say they should pay 3 months rent advance. You're talking about a review of the law to increase it to 1 year, but it's still the law that they are only supposed to pay 3 months rent advance. Can they count on you to enforce the law? Because you're going to swear an oath to enforce the laws of this country. That's what you're going to swear an oath to do.
I'm sorry, the question, the preamble, I got it, but the question, would you want to restate it, please?
Question is, the law on rental property says that you can only charge a tenant 3 months rent for residence and 6 months for commercial use. And I'm saying that is the law. Until you get the law changed to 1 year as you are proposing, and until you increase the stock of housing, what is available in the market, by law, a young person who wants to rent a place should be looking at paying 3 months. And I'm saying that you want to be a minister your oath of office will say that you are swearing to enforce the laws of the country. Will you enforce that law so that young people pay 3 months' rent advance?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, under our circumstance, it will be impractical to strictly enforce the law. I've already made a point that if you implement it strictly, the landlord will engage in opportunistic behavior. They will be withdrawing their services and you will not be helping the tenants. The interest of government policy on rent is to protect the tenants. But a good rent policy, Mr. Chairman, must allow for capital recovery. And that is why I'm saying that the current rent law is outmoded and has outlived its usefulness, and that there is the need for us to, as a matter of urgency, revise the law. As for the law, you can implement it. But what is the purpose of implementing when the tenants that you are serving them, it will not help them. It won't make any sense with the greatest of respect. And that is why I'm saying that it is important that as soon as possible, we prioritize the revision of the Rent Act to make it relevant to, in the current circumstances. Thank you very much.
Chairman, I have a follow-up on that for if you will kindly.
Yeah.
The Real Estate Agency Act was passed by this House last year. Perhaps you may want to look at that law and explore possibilities of ensuring that with them as a stakeholders, you would be able to see how best you can look at that sector. Because indeed, this advance is really a difficult situation. And you and I often become the target because they come to us, the young men. And, well, you can add the young woman. Mr. Chair, Honorable Muntaka added the young woman. I am saying the young men. The young men, you know, he's adding the young women. They will go to their MPs. That's what, okay. I thank you for assisting me. So, in other words, the young men and women.
The young men will be taken care of by the young men. What are your suggestions?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I may have to restrict myself to what I want to say. And allow others who say what they want to say. But, Mr. Chair, all I want to say is that as a political class, when there's crisis, they fall on us. All right? So perhaps you may consider the Real Estate Agency Act, which was passed recently, to explore how this thing can be dealt with. It's a serious matter. I thank you.
Honorable Chair, it's very, very well noted, and I thank you for that. I'll have a look at it and see how it can be applied.
Yes, Honorable Zuhiri. Yes, Honorable Kujato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the matter of affordable housing is a very important one, as has been underscored by colleagues. And it's even become more challenging in these times. So I was looking at a World Bank COVID-19 impact report published last month. And it says that almost 163 million people have been forced into the poverty bracket, what the World Bank is calling the new poor, COVID-19 induced poverty. So we cannot downplay the issue to do with affordable housing, particularly in these moments, in these times that we live in. How creatively, as minister, if given the nod, can you address the thorny issue of affordable housing? And I want you to link that to the provision of duty posts for public sector workers, doctors, nurses, teachers, security agencies. These days it's quite common to see doctors, nurses who have to travel far afield to work. And these are emergency service providers. If there's an emergency at the hospital, we all need them. Bungalows for them. Schools are built, no bungalows for teachers, for headmistresses and housemasters and all of that. So the matter to do with affordable housing and duty posts for civil servants, public sector workers, and professionals, how creatively can you, through policy, help this nation address this matter?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I think I've made a point about how I intend to implement the affordable housing program. One thing that I didn't add is that as part of the creation or the establishment of the National Housing Policy, we also have in it a National Housing Fund that will help fund the activities of the National Housing Authority. And with this fund, we'll be able to do a lot with it. Can raise money with it, securitize it, and do further projects. So once we have that in place, we can do a lot in terms of affordable housing. When you talk about duty posts, I agree with the Honorable Member, it's very important. Currently, the ministry is having a redevelopment program in the capital cities where old bungalows are redesigned to make optimum use of the land. And as a result, the ministry has gotten a lot of houses for public servants as duty posts. And I want to further add that we have to extend this to the district assemblies, where we will work with the district assemblies and build rental apartment units so that public officials who go to district to work will have a place to rent and stay in the decent homes. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Mr. Chairman, finally from me, I hold in my hands the report of the Infrastructure Subcommittee of the 2020 Presidential Transition Team. And I observe from page 31 the excelling your former minister, the Fabo Taja, is complete for a decision. He was occupying of ND Plats, National Security Operatives, and he said he tried to deal with these security of the ND Plats has failed. Have you been on the one matter and you do it?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm briefed it. In my understanding, National Security, Ministry of House will call it to addition. But then when I get the nod to be at the ministry, I will make a follow-up and see what I can do to expedite the process. Thank you.
Honorable Undaka. He said no. When I give you the nod, you pass it on.
I said after him. Chairman, with all respect, I said after Samuel.
How?
Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence. I'm grateful. Honorable nominee, you spoke eloquently about your relationship with the President, your long-standing relationship with the President. How did you use that relationship to uplift or to block when he became President? I ask because I have come across some publications where you have been accused of preventing people from accessing the President. Dr. Mwako Ba, the Osuno Group, and others
have all suggested that your relationship with the president was not supportive of party growth. What do you say to that?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Dr. Amwako Ba, I don't think that he said that I blocked him. What he said was that he made attempts to get an appointment and he didn't get it at that particular time. And subsequently, we were able to arrange for him to see the president. So, I mean, I'm sure you've had opportunity to be close to the president before, and you know, it's very difficult to manage the president's schedule. First of all, I wasn't the one responsible for the president's diary. Whenever anybody comes to me to want to see the president, I go to the person who is responsible. And in most cases, the person will advise that maybe this period is very tight, so give me some time. And in the course of time, the person will come back to you and give you time. But it's not everybody who is that patient. People think that when you made the request, it should happen the next day. But the president is everywhere. Presidents are very busy. They have multiple functions and all that. So that one alone cannot be used to generalize to say that I wasn't supportive. I disagree.
I spoke of the Osono group too. Osono group.
Osono group did not say I did not allow them to see president. As for Osono group, I personally think that it was an orchestrated attempt to tarnish my reputation. I don't know where that came from. Thank you.
Honorable, did you have any interaction with a group called Osono Group?
No, sir. I'd never had. In fact, I didn't know of the existence of any Osono Group.
Honorable. Honorable nominee, the Osono Group made a number of allegations, and I'll leave it at your response that they attempted to tarnish your image. It's just okay that you know about their existence now, and maybe we'll leave it at that. But I've gone through audit reports on the ministry that you are going to. And one thing I see that is repeatedly captured is the issue of rent not being paid by people occupying government bungalows, and also retired officers still occupying those bungalows that were assigned to them. I don't know if you have been briefed on this. If you have been briefed, how do you think that situation where people live in government bungalows without paying rent, which also doesn't enable government to keep those bungalows in good shape, so they are run down, and also retired officers still occupying those bungalows where junior officers who have appointments have to struggle in the cities and towns to find accommodation for themselves.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I have not been briefed about this particular issue, but I find it unacceptable for people to live in the government bungalows not paying rent, and also retired officers continue to stay there whilst junior officers and other people need accommodation. God willing, when I get the nod and I go to the ministry, I'll take this as a priority and work on it. Thank you.
You're done. Leadership. Yeah. Does the majority chief group have a question?
No.
Yes, Minority Chief Whip. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to find out from the nominee, in your briefing, in the briefing that you took at the ministry, I want to believe that you've gone for briefing, right?
Yes, sir.
And in the brief, what challenges have you identified as major in the sector that you are going?
I think because it's a capital-intensive ministry, funding is a major challenge, and also irregular release of budgetary allocation for projects is also a major challenge.
So maybe this is one of the major challenges that you've identified. And as you may know, I mean, for government funding, no ministry, I believe that every Minister of Finance itself will complain about sufficient funds. So as you are going there, what innovative idea do you think you bring on board to overcome this major challenge of financing?
In the area of housing, I've already mentioned that as part of the National Housing Authority, we want to add a National Housing Fund along the lines of Road Fund and Get Fund, so that we can get some breakthrough in terms of financing our construction, housing. That's one innovative way that I'm proposing that is not in the system now. In fact, it's part of the national housing policy that was launching in 2015, and I believe it's something that you must. I said that it's in the national housing policy that was launched in 2015, and I think it's something that you must all support, that it will provide some breakthrough in terms of housing finance in Ghana.
Mr. Chairman, what about a PPP arrangement? Because if I look at you and I from Kumasi, and a typical area, Alaba, where the houses used to be mud houses, then the place became bricks with business. And then the landlords decided that, okay, come and build it into 4-story, give us the last 2, and then use the first 2 as shops, and then you operate them for some number of years, and then we'll share. And you'll see that virtually in Alaba, where you and I are very much familiar with, a lot of high-rising buildings are coming up. And it's not because the landlords have money to build them, but they have leveraged their land, and they still have place to sleep, and they still have also this business that is running, and they're able to sustain them. Will you consider, knowing very well a number of government bungalows and lands that are in prime areas, that a lot of developers that may be having their money and may be interested in investing, will you consider this as one of the arrangements that you believe may help deal with the financing deficit?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I think this falls within the government's redevelopment program, where government provides land for developers and for developers to also build and give government some part of the building. In fact, that is the concept that the ministry is being proposed for the redevelopment of Nima. That is the plan. When Lima sits on a 1,000-acre land, but the place doesn't have amenities. It's not a controlled area. So the plan, for instance, is that you use, say, a quarter of the place to build very good high-rising buildings for the inhabitants. Then the rest, the developer will use it for other purposes, commercial purposes. In this arrangement, government doesn't pay anything. But if there is a strong, deep stakeholder engagement for the people to accept this kind of arrangement, it will be a breakthrough in providing decent accommodation for a place like Nima. And I believe that same concept can be used for Aboabo and Aswaso area, where you and I are from.
Well, but the challenge you may have is that the lack of Nima and Aboabo, where I'm born, is that these are private properties. These are private properties. For example, I may not be interested in you coming to say, my family house, you want to have this arrangement. But if you can use the like of Kanda, the Kanda, estate, which belongs to the state, or you use some other areas like around Parliament here, the Osu area here, government has a lot of land in prime areas. That one is easier, but private, arrangement is difficult. Even this Alaba that I'm talking about, you could go and you see one house in between two rises. They say, no, we are not interested. And it defeats the plan that you are thinking that you could have to have the whole area developed. But why not start with government-owned areas that are easier to start with?
Now, that one is already ongoing. I've already mentioned that as a result of that, we've been able to, the government has gotten a lot of houses and now using some as duty posts, when the honorable member asked me. We've done some at Roman Ridge, we've done some at Circle Road, and many other places, in cantonments and all that, and it's ongoing. There's one that is planned for Ringway Estate. All those redevelopment programs are going to make optimum use of the land, because you have an old land, 1 acre land, but the house that is seated there is a very small, maybe boys' quarters. But when you give it to a developer, you will see that you can get about 15 housing units from that. And that's the redevelopment program that is going. For that one is already ongoing. But you mentioned a situation where two private individuals having that kind of arrangement in Aboabo. And I said that even that concept, we can deepen it for the development of even slum areas like Old Fadama and other places.
Mr. Chairman, is he happy with the kind of design that are being used in the area that is talking about cantonment? You see a government land, yes, it was just one bungalow on 1 acre land. Now you'll be passing by, you just see some 1 story, the maximum I've seen are just 2 stories. These are still lands that are underutilized. When you look at that of the private persons in around airport residential area, it's going 15, it's going 10. Don't you think that we should standardize the kind of design and structures that if people want to engage government on this kind of arrangement of PPP, we say that for this area, we are not going anything less than 10 stories. So if you are interested, come. But we are not going to allow this 1 story, 2 story, because in the next 10, 20, 30 years maximum, they will also become a problem.
Honorable Member, I agree with you. I think it's a very important contribution. And the establishment of the National Housing Authority, one of the things that it will do is to standardize housing. So for this redevelopment program, for instance, it could say that this is a type of standardized housing that we need here. And we need this number of rooms, this number of apartments. So I agree with you. And with the introduction of the National Housing Authority, it will help in ensuring that. Thank you.
In an earlier answer to
government workers who stay in government bungalow default in their rent payment, and some who even after retirement not want to move out. Will you consider a scheme where, yes, these houses are for government, but you have to procure them, or the allocation are done through a kind of PPP, where they will ensure that people will pay what is due the state, even if it's as a token, just to be able to maintain the structures. And then when it is your time to quit, they will ensure that you quit on time, instead of the current arrangement where the Ministry of Works and Housing do not have enough manpower to be going around collecting these monies and ensuring that people are evicted when they are retired.
I'm sorry, please come again. I didn't get you a break.
Now I'm saying that, will you consider a scheme that is PPP, that's public-private partnership, where they do the collection of the rent? A private sector that will do the collection of the rent to ensure that everybody pays the rent, maintain it, and run a fee, and also to ensure that people get out of the bungalows when the time is due. Because I know the Minister of Works and Housing do not have enough manpower to be going around ensuring that everybody is paying the rent, and those who are supposed to quit at the right time. Now I'm asking whether you may consider that too.
Yes, I'm for outsourcing this kind of government work to private sector, because they bring some efficiency into it, and I will seriously consider that.
Yes, I just want to find out from what is his take about Minister of Works and Housing selling these very scarce government bungalows to individuals and in some instances occupants after staying in them for some time. Then by the time I realize the houses are sold to them, and then it becomes a private property.
I am not for that. I'm against that. And we need those land for this redevelopment program. So if you sell it to individuals, you don't have this land for the program that you are talking about. So I'm totally against the sale of these lands to private.
So is it an assurance that as this House is considering your nomination, if considered, under you, no government bungalow will be sold out to any private individual?
Honorable, you can take it as an assurance from me. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, earlier when he was talking about the increase of the minimum months from 3 in the case of residential, and then the commercial 6 months, he said that moving them to 1 year may be a reasonable time to ensure compliance, right? Is it not the deficit that is creating the huge market rather than the number of months? So if you don't deal with the deficit, even if you put it to 1 year, in a very short period of time, once the demands are high, people will move to 2 years and 3 years, and then you now come and say, oh, the 1 year is not sufficient, that's why they are doing that, so let's move it to 3 years. Is it not the deficit that we need to deal with instead of just talking about the months?
It is, you are right, it is the deficit. And it is because of the deficit, that is why I said, if you implement the 6 month advance now, the landlord will be engaging opportunistic behaviors. The ultimate is to close the deficit. But once we haven't been able to do that, this is a temporary measure that we need to make sure that the tenant and the landlord are both happy. Thank you.
Is it not also the issue of trust? Because sometimes you rent out an apartment to a tenant and you want to help, so, oh, pay me every month. And then the person goes 3 months without paying. What do you think we can do to be able to help, for example, workers that have monthly income so that their salary could be paid directly to the landlord, so that it becomes an incentive for the landlord to say that, look, since I can get your rent every month, I may not need to charge an advance. Because sometimes it's also the issue of trust, that you put the person in there and then you don't get your money.
I think it's an interesting suggestion that we take a look at. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much.
Do you want to ask a question?
No.
Yes, Deputy Leader.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, my good friend Asenso and I share the same esprit de corps, and I am happy for this opportunity given him by Mr. President to serve his nation as a Minister of State. But Honorable Suhini put to you some questions regarding some allegations by certain groups. Do you see allegations by certain groups? Do you see some of these things coming at a time as a young man, Deputy Chief of Staff, as an attempt to victimize you?
We are in politics and we can't rule these things out.
So it's a possibility.
Certainly so.
Because for no reason, and you not being in charge of appointments at the presidency, to be accused publicly as someone preventing someone from having access to Mr. President, obviously is to set you up for public ridicule and hate, correct?
You are right. I remember at a point when I mentioned it to the president, he told me that these are some of the problems you go through when you are close to the president.
To conclude, don't expect this to cease. Going to the ministry, you should expect more of such. Be fair. And I'm sure, guided by your own oath, that in times of difficulty, you're going to rely on God. Your faith shall save you. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Minority Leader.
Chairman, let me thank you. And Chairman, the nominee is young into the high office of minister. I appreciate that he will be putting his feet in the shoes of the Honorable Atachia. I share a lot of strong values with him. We share our reading books, and I respect his depth. You must appreciate that, including me, many ministers have gone to ministries and have not succeeded, not because they do not have the will, and not because they do not have the expertise, but because they are constrained. For instance, I heard you talk about the housing, low-cost housing regime. I've been perusing the handing over notes of the Honorable Atachia. He wrote to the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance withdrew the guarantees. No one will do an off-taker if you don't have that assurance from government. I've also read his initiative on the National Flood Control Program, for which he requested for 500 million Ghana cedis. Ultimately, he was asked to reduce it to 300 million Ghana cedis. No releases were done. So I just want to have your assurance. One, EDRA, there's some project which was started in EDRA that has been abandoned. Can I have your assurance that you get it started to serve the people of EDRA in the Ashanti region? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Please, which particular project in EDRA are you talking about? What project?
Thank you, Chairman. The Honorable Samson Ahi, Saglemi Housing Project. Main project was to decongest the city, as you said. 2,172 acres. I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it. I have to refer to it in the handing over note. So I'm on the Saglemi in the page now. Now, my thinking is that get and raise additional financing, get Saglemi completed, consult with the president, and that's what you do with good influence, and dedicate that housing infrastructure to the Ghana Armed Forces. Instead of leaving it lying idle, when soldiers don't have places to sleep, many of them are already in that area. No one is saying that there shouldn't be ensuring value for money. But when you drive past it, your heart will bleed that the state of Ghana will invest enormous resources, $181 million US, then 4 or 5 years on, it is still idle. Can I have your assurance? Then I'll open the handing over notes to come to the Ejura project for you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I've already given the assurance that when I get to the ministry, if I get a nod, I will work hard to ensure early completion of the Saglemi project. Whether or not that can be given to the Ghana Army, I will need further consultations on the matter. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Chairman, the Ejura project is in page 45 of the 307 page, Ejura Lot 2. The Ejura Lot 2 project is located at Ejura in the Ashanti region. The contract was awarded in June 2011 and has not been completed. So take note, when you go, even in that page, Coastal Maritime Program is also listed as uncompleted. Then the sea defense projects, I don't intend to take you through. You are not at the ministry. It will not be fair for me to be asking for your output there. You see, Cape Coast Coastal Protection Project, 22%. Commander Coastal Protection Project, 30%. Anumabu Coastal Protection Project, 43%. Then my worry is here, Ningo Pram Pram Coastal Protection Project, 15%. And then Abuazi Coastal Protection Project, 15%. Will you ensure early completion of these projects to protect livelihoods in those areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, all these projects are on schedule. And God willing, when I get to the ministry, we will do whatever it takes to make sure that they are completed. But as far as I'm aware, they are on schedule. Thank you.
Yeah, when you go through the handing over notes again, Chairman referred you to Article 35(7). The Constitution imposes an obligation that as minister, projects initiated by the Honorable Atachia, you don't go to the ministry and say that you are abandoning them. Projects that were earlier initiated, as you go through the handing over, I see 2011, 2012, 2015, 2016, continuity. If you come to Tamale, on the Wamali Road, driving through Salada, the housing project which was initiated just between Vitim and San Gergo is kind of abandoned. Can I have your assurance that you will support the completion of the housing project?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, are you referring to the affordable housing program initiated by President Kufuor?
I should think so, Chair.
Yes. We have 3 of those in the country, Kufuor, Tamale, and Wa.
What will you do about them?
As we speak, those 3 have been ceded to State Housing Company to complete them. In the case of Tamale, my understanding is that there has been a lot of encroachment on the land, and there are still some issues with the land ownership. I got a briefing from the State Housing, and what came to my mind was that since, Honorable Member, you are from there, you will count on your leadership to resolve these matters of encroachment and land ownership.
Chairman, I can assure the nominee that I'll play any role with the chiefs to resolve any outstanding issue. What I'm saying is that the workers there, whether nurses or doctors, it's very close to the Tamale Teaching Hospital, where doctors are struggling for accommodation, nurses posted in the area are struggling for accommodation. If there is encroachment, it's because you've abandoned it. It's been abandoned for long, not your fault. You are now moving to the ministry. So take note of it. Chairman, I think that I should genuinely accept that I'm tired, and maybe we'll have to, I should genuinely accept that I'm tired. And with many colleagues, and knowing that you are now strict with your COVID directive, I can only end by assuring the honorable nominee that I heard you shouting praises on the president. He's not going to accompany you to Works and Housing. Go and leave your mark and leave your blueprint and doing many of the projects that the honorable attached chair initiated, but for want of support of finance, had to abandon them and walk out on them. You know that is what happened. I'm reading from his handing over now. If you want, I'll read essays for you. How he got frustrated for lack of funding and lack of releases. This is official. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Leader. You're done. Thank you very much. Honorable nominee.
No, I can read it for you.
I have no question for you.
Buama.
We thank you for attending upon the House to answer questions. You will hear from us, but for now you are discharged.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you.